Thank you.
Thanks very much. So I'm Joy, I'm a principal economist at Magic Numbers, and this is Hal, a senior economist at Magic Numbers. And as we said, we're going to take you through measurement in a cookieless world. Magic Numbers is an econometrics consultancy, so our main kind of focus is on marketing effectiveness and helping brands understand what drives their sales and therefore how much media is driving, and then work out how they can do that as profitably as possible. So we've got some super cool clients. At the moment we're working with Yorkshire Tea and Taylor's at Harrogate. We've worked with Little Moons, UK TV, Money Supermarket, Fever Tree. It's lots of really cool brands helping them to unpick their sales. And I'm going to hand over to Hal to take you through the first section.
Try that? Yeah. Thank you very much, Joy. And firstly, I should just apologise for a slightly croaky voice. Just come back from Glastonbury, so it's a pleasure to be opening Nottingham's own pyramid stage here today. Maybe more the other stage, actually, but no. Still pleased to be here. So yeah, we're going to talk to you about measurement today and how you can keep doing it really well and accurately in a world without cookies for both on and offline media, and as was said in the introduction, all kinds of other things that really, really matter to sales. So we're going to talk about these three sections today. Firstly, the dangers of digital attribution, why it might be giving you a slightly biased picture of your media, how econometrics is different. Spoiler alert, yes, we do offer econometrics. That is kind of what we're in the business of doing. So come and talk to us about that at the end, if you're interested. And then finally, kind of what you can do about it. What's the takeaway, the really key takeaway for you out of this talk? Might just wait a moment for a few more people to come in before we kick on in earnest. Wow, full house. Who would have known measurement was this exciting? Really? That's it, is it? It's nothing to do with us. We're going to have to invite some volunteers to join us up here. There's so many people coming in. Should we do the hands up?
Yeah.
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 While we wait for a few more people to come in, we just wanted to say, who's actually heard of econometrics or is using it in their jobs day to day? Maybe let's start with the who's heard of it. Put your hands up if you've heard of econometrics. Hands a bit higher. Come on, we can't really see them.
There's a few.
A few
hands.
A handful. And who's actually using it day to day? None. Okay. Well, hopefully you'll learn a lot from this talk then. Right, let's kick off with the first section then, the dangers of digital attribution. Apologies for the kind of cut-off slide. We're in this retro 4:3 format. So I want to start by explaining some of the dangers via a happy and very true story, all about me. This is me at the start of my journey to buying a bike a while ago. I just decided I wanted a bike to go on some epic adventures. And I was absolutely clueless about what that meant, what kind of bike I wanted. I just knew it needed to be able to take me anywhere. So when I'm kind of clueless about something like this, what I tend to do is go onto YouTube and I just do some research, have a look at various channels. What do? Look at some product reviews, all this kind of stuff, get my head in the space, look at what's kind of good. Maybe one of the things I see is a nice bit of sponsored content from this bike brand called Ribble and a cycling channel called GCN. And I think, oh yeah, the bikes, they look pretty good. But they're just one brand among so many at this stage. It's pretty overwhelming. So I go about my purchase journey a little bit longer. I keep Googling a few different brands for a few bikes that I've liked. And there's this one sponsored listing on Google that just keeps on coming up. It's so persistent. And eventually, I'm not really ready to buy yet. Maybe I'm waiting for payday or, I just haven't made up my mind. But it's just so persistent that I think, well, actually, that looks like a pretty good deal. It's on sale. So I go and check it out. And I think I'll take it. Yeah, that's the bike for me. I plump for it and adventures, here we come. So great news. I'm happy. So I want you to think about this kind of example and in the context of digital attribution and specifically last click attribution. where would the credit be assigned in terms of this journey? And it would obviously all be assigned at that PPC ad. PPC ad would be the one that's saying, okay, that was the effective ad here. That was the one that made me purchase the bike. And to be honest, it's not completely wrong. Like, that was a very effective ad. It did actually push me over the line. And I want to say this is actually true. It did happen. But let's imagine an alternative universe where my friend Hannah, she's not my real friend, it's a stock image, tells me about her bike. She says, you've got to get a gravel bike like mine, the Ribble CGR 725. And I say, okay, Hannah, thanks very much. I do trust her opinion. I think she knows what she's talking about. But I kind of move on with my life, you know. It's lodged in there somewhere, but I'm moving on with my life. Carry on throughout the purchase journey as before, doing my research, looking at the same videos, seeing all the same marketing messages. But I've got that recommendation from Hannah that I really trust lodged in my mind. So that when it comes to seeing that PPC ad that I talked about before, I'm in a very different state of mind. And I'm thinking, rather than, might as well check it out, actually, wow, that's the bike for me. And I click on it, and I buy it as before. And actually, in this instance, was it really that ad that made me buy the bike, or was it acting slightly more like kind of signposting than a genuine driver of the sale? Who knows? I think probably it could have been an organic listing that I could have clicked on. But basically, last click attribution won't be able to tell the difference between either of those two journeys. It will only assign credit to that very last click. And I want to say that this is in the kind of simplified case of just last click attribution, and there are different ways of modeling it as well, but the same kind of thing remains. So obviously that was in a very simplistic case of just a few touch points throughout my journey. In reality, there are so many things that I would have been exposed to throughout that kind of middle section there, as I move throughout the different options from kind of exploring and evaluating the different options. And Google are one of the companies that have kind of tried to model this middle bit of the purchase journey with a report they did. I'm sure some of you have read it. Came out a couple of years ago now, I think. But one of the main conclusions for them was it's kind of messy. You can't really model it that easily. And lots of different consultancies and people have tried to come up with nice looking pictures, but they do find it really, really difficult to do because it's just so complicated. So it's not really a surprise that whatever the form of attribution modeling we're talking about, be it one of the more simplistic ones like last click, or I know Google have made some advances with the kind of attribution modeling they're doing, like the kind of data-driven modeling, it's all going to have the same kind of issues, that it's only going to be able to assign credit to your digital advertising channels. And even at that, if we're talking about Google's own data-driven attribution modeling, only the channels within the Google ecosystem. So sure, it might have been able to assign credit to that sponsored content that I talked about before, given that it was on YouTube, but there's a whole lot that it's missing. It's kind of like looking for your keys under the streetlight. Basically making decisions based on the data that you have easily available, given to you by Google or Meta, whoever, rather than kind of looking at the big picture and looking what actually matters. And the thing is, this kind of situation surprisingly does work for a lot of small businesses. They're finding their keys. But as they grow and media budgets get bigger and brand building becomes more important, the bit that's missing, the outside world, that kind of thing becomes a lot more important. And it's all the more important given the kind of media context that we're living in at the moment and we're working in. As digital media investment globally is expected to reach 500 billion this year. That's like the biggest channel by miles, and is also the only one, according to Walk, the only one that was expected to grow this year. So if we're spending this much on it, it's really, really important that we're measuring it properly and we know exactly what it's doing for driving sales. And I would say at the moment, sometimes we're missing the mark on payback. What digital attribution is telling us can miss the mark on payback if we compare to something like econometrics. So in this chart here, we have efficiency errors. So I think they're done on return on investment. So return on investment errors from last click attribution versus econometrics. And we can see at the bottom, PPC is being kind of overvalued by last click attribution by more than, well, almost 3 times. And then towards the top of the chart, the more kind of brand building channels like brand TV, press, they're being hugely undervalued. So yeah, there are some discrepancies. It's a bit concerning. But like, why is this econometrics? What is it? I mean, no one's working with it. But what's so good about it? How is it different? And why should we trust that over digital attribution? And I want to just compare it to last click specifically, and thinking about that, a kind of broader version of that journey that I went through with me and the bike. Last click can only see that last click in the journey, so it can't really identify what drives growth and what is a cost. It can't see anything that comes before. Can't see any of those other online touch points. Sure, some of the other kinds of digital attribution can, but it certainly can't see any offline touch points. So if we just go back to the bike example, maybe I saw a TV ad with the Tour de France that had that brand in, and I thought, cool. Or it was a really hot summer and I just wanted to be out on the bike. Or COVID meant I wanted to do loads more outdoor exercise. Like, those are all really, really legitimate drivers of sales and may have started me off on that journey and would have been completely missed by last click attribution, and could mean that the payback that you're getting from it is kind of skewed. So, how is econometrics different? Well, it can include all of these influences throughout the journey, and so can untangle the incremental effects. So what is actually driving the sale and how much? And the thing that's important here, and just to come back to the kind of title of the talk, measurement in a cookieless world, this is happening at an aggregate level, so for all your shoppers. And so there's kind of no question at all around the privacy of anyone's data. So I'm just going to pass on to Joy now, and she's going to tell us about kind of how you do it with a really nice example.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. So our favourite example for explaining econometrics is about ice cream. And if you imagine that this is weekly sales of ice cream in a given supermarket over, say, 3 or 4 years, the sales go up in some weeks and they come down in other weeks. And there are lots of reasons why that happens. And so essentially what me and Hal do is try and work out what makes the sales go up and what makes the sales come down. And so we wanted to take you through what we essentially do when we're doing that. So the first thing that we do is chat to our clients and say, what data have you got available that you can share with us that we can test in our models? And a really key one for sales of ice cream or any other kind of FMCG product is distribution and how many products are available in stores. So what we do is get all the data and we chart everything up visually. We want to understand what that looks like. And you can see on here that we've got a trend line for the number of shops that the ice cream is available in, and it roughly follows the trend of the sales. So you can see that as availability increases, we're selling more ice cream. So what we do is we add that into our model, and you can see that we're starting to explain a little bit of the sales. So the chart at the top, the pink line is what we refer to as an actual. That's how we know how many sales of ice cream we had. And the blue line is what we call our fitted. So that's essentially what the model is saying, we think this is what happened to sales. And underneath what we have there is residuals, and that's basically the difference between the two lines. So we want those numbers at the bottom to be as small as possible, so we're explaining as much as we can. So this is the first factor. We then say, okay, well, something else that we think will influence ice cream is temperature. So when it's hotter, people eat more ice cream. And you can see that actually there's a really nice kind of seasonal pattern in this that follows the spikes and dips in our sales as well. So we add that into the model, and you can see that actually those two lines are getting closer and closer together, and our residuals at the bottom are getting smaller and smaller. So great, we're improving it a lot. The next one that we want to add in is price, and you can see that this improves it even further. So again, our residuals are getting smaller and our two lines are getting closer together. And then the last one that we want to think about is advertising. So obviously we're really focused on the impact of marketing. So this is really key for us. And you can see that actually if you just charted up your sales and when the campaign was live, as you can see here, you wouldn't necessarily be able to see that advertising caused an increase in sales. But by using a model, we can see that actually when you add it in, it is working. And it is explaining some of those sales. And so we can confirm that it's working. And now our model can explain most of those wiggles and trends that we're seeing in the sales week to week. The thing to say on here is we never ever get the two lines perfectly together because you will never be able to explain 100% of your sales. But typically with econometrics, we would aim for around 90%, so kind of a 10% difference. And that means it's kind of really statistically robust. We're really happy with the outcome and we can be confident in the drivers of those sales. Now these are only kind of 4 really simple factors. The reality is that we probably test, I don't know, thousands of variables in the models, and a finished model might have kind of 20 to 40 variables in depending on how many observations you've got in your sales. So it's a bit more complicated, but hopefully now you can go away after this talk and say, yeah, know how it works, it's kind of exactly what we're doing. So that's great in terms of the methodology, but actually how can you guys use it and what do we want you to take away today? I want you to think about the brands that you work with or maybe yourself as a business and think about where you are in terms of building your demand pool. So a lot of the kind of businesses that we work with would have a demand pool where there are a set of people who are predisposed to buying your product, and actually you might be running acquisition media to convert them. So obviously we're at a digital conference today, you know, a lot of that could be paid search, it could be social, it could be display ads, and hopefully you are converting your demand pool into these lovely smiley face happy customers that we've got here. And that's really good when you're kind of a smaller business, but as you grow, as Hal said, the brand building part becomes even more important. So actually you need to grow the awareness in the pool on the far left where you're growing that intention to purchase. You might be able to see that this is happening to your business when you look at sales. So actually, if your sales look like this is a chart that we refer to as a ramp and bump chart. And essentially, you might have really fast growth at the beginning with some possibly online media. You know, it tends to be a bit cheaper than something like TV. It's much more easily controlled. You can turn it on and off. But then what often happens is that the performance plateaus and that kind of really fast growth slows down. And so what happens then is that a lot of brands would then turn to that brand building media that we saw on the slide before to really accelerate growth and get that bump in sales. And so quite often you would have brand building medias like TV and YouTube, typically AV, maybe audio, kind of working with your online ads. And also you would have a synergy between those two things. So when they're running at the same time, you're going to boost your sales even further because people see both sets. So this is great. Imagine that we've got our budget signed off. Okay, we want to go for this brand building bit. Mine and Hal's job is then to help you work out what channels do you use and what impact do they have. So if you imagine that you are using activation media on the left-hand side, quite often if you were spending in, say, weeks 2 and week 5, you get this really large spike in sales in that given week, and you can see that impact happening straight away. But the tail from it, kind of how often people remember the media, tends to go down quite quickly. Whereas when you're running brand building media, again, if it was in weeks 2 and weeks 5, the tail is much, much longer. And we can see from the models that this is referred to as an ad stock or a retention rate, if you've used that term before. And essentially people remember TV ads for ages. If you think about some of your favourite brands and the ads that they run, I'm sure you can all think of examples where you think, oh, it was a really cool ad, I remember it. And although you might not buy the product today, you know, when you're in the market for it, you go back to that brand. So we can unpick this with the model and the shapes that it looks like. And based on this, we can say, okay, well, activation channels, we should be using things like search, Facebook, Instagram, direct response TV, radio. And then actually, if you want to build your brand, it's usually things like brand TV, sponsorship, YouTube, online video, BVOD, press, out of home, all these things where you can get a really emotional message across, kind of convey a story, get people on board with your brand. So this is all great. The thing that we want you to take away is think about what does your measurement look like. Think about the measurement framework that you have in place and where you are as a brand or where your clients are, and actually what is right for you. So there are loads of different strategies that you can use. Some we think you should use with care. They can be good, but think about how you're interpreting them. There are 4 that we think are brilliant and we would really recommend. The first one is doing pre and post campaign tracking dips. So you can see that these are in pink. This would be maybe doing brand tracking or working with different agencies to say, okay, what happens before my campaign, what happens after my campaign, and what's the difference? Really simple to work out and can give you a really clear answer. The one next to it is a blitz versus control, essentially A/B testing. If you've got media running in different regions in the UK and you turn one off and you have it running in another region, you can compare the two. And actually, if your sales go up in one and down in another, then you can say, okay, well, that's the difference. That's my incrementality. And that can be really, really useful to say, kind of easy test, cheap to do, and really clear. The other one is to identify the right metrics to watch when you're on air. So, for example, we often see, especially with e-commerce businesses, that if you're running media, your web visits will spike. That's really easy to monitor, and you can say, actually, I can see this really clear correlation, especially if you're running TV as well. Quite often, if you've got TV spots running, you can look right down to when the spot was running and the spike in web visits. And then it will be no surprise to you that the last one is econometrics. Obviously, that's what we do. We would recommend it. There are loads of different providers of econometrics, kind of consultancies like us or agencies. And as we've taken you through, hopefully you can see that actually as business grows, it becomes even more important to account for the weather, COVID, the economy, all of your media, seasonality, price, distribution, all of these millions of factors that are going to be impacting sales. So that's it from us. Kind of key takeaway, go and have a think about your measurement framework, whether this is right for you. If you're interested, come and chat to us. We love talking about econometrics. You can follow us on LinkedIn, and Magic Numbers also post loads and loads of articles and more information essentially about what we do. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, everyone.